If you do not want to change, if you do not want to better yourself, if you do not want to break outside of this matrix, if you want to live in your comfortable delusion that they have built for you, do not watch these videos. Leave this channel. If you do not want any truth, don't want to understand, if you are not here to hear something that's outside of your own mind and accept others' minds and opinions and the way they think for themselves, you do not belong. And finally, if you are not trying to be positive, if you are not trying to help create solutions while we discuss the problems and how they got here, you do not belong here. Negativity, hate, disrespect, name-calling, those things will not be allowed here on this platform, and not in this empire. We are the ones, the true Americans, that want to be free and stand as we have always stood.
Still like the fuel to the game, watch it spark. My lines burn like blunts getting smoked in the dark. Hella cooking shit up if your ass wanna spar. Barbecue your beef up like the seats in my car. Cool yourself off refrigerator and jar. Baby rappers be knocking like this is not an art. It's not an art. Huh, you forgot about that part. Lady rappers be knocking like this is not an art. Huh,
you forgot about that part. They forgot about it because they don't realize. You never know when the show's gonna come on. You never know when it's gonna stop off and just fall off the cliff. One day I'm just not gonna be here. Right? So we're gonna go ahead and we're gonna get into this last little piece of our legislation here. This is our proposal. Okay? It's not anything other than a proposal. That's it. Not trying to hurt nobody's feelings, not trying to tear down any systems, not trying to overthrow anything at all. We're not doing any of that. Okay? None of that. We definitely want, within the system we have, to put some guardrails that can make it work or profitably, long-term longevity, and actually build a legacy for American culture. American be the new business culture. Okay? Because our society, we're about our business. And let's just keep it above. We are about our business here in America. Shout out to CM. Salute, salute, salute. Light one up for the main. I'll drop the link in there if you want, bro. Just let me know. If you want the link, I'll drop it. This is the last hurrah for this whole number one, this legislation right here. We gotta do our best to explain this to the people, have it on record, and then we finna move on to the next thing. But this is a key right here into our society. How we do business, how we conduct business. It's relevant. And we have to be held accountable for the collateral damage that our businesses have done to the community. The plastics and all these things, I feel like that's a corner cutting situation. That's a feeling. I get it. At the same time, if we calculate it, it's a byproduct from all of the fossil fuels or the oil and the whatever. If there's nothing to do with this byproduct, if it's building up so much trash, and we know it's poisonous, okay? If we're not just gonna throw it in a volcano, right, and let it just melt in the volcano, if we're not gonna do that, then what else can we do with it? It's probably something that we have to step away from, because it's destroying the planet itself, okay? That is our entire ecosystem. But everybody is afraid that if we start doing good, everything will go bad. because everybody is out for a dollar right now, trying to make a buck, man. I get that. I'm not trying to tell anybody that they can't get money. Money is necessary in our society right now because our society is based off of greed. It really is. Our society being based off of greed is what puts us in the situation that we're in. And it's a ever fuck up circle, right? How do we step outside of that? How do we go beyond this space? Well, the first thing is we have to have an idea. By the way, shout out to everybody that went to work today, everybody that did overtime. You guys make the world go round. Without you, nothing happens. And you are underappreciated, and the world knows it, which is why we have our first legislation move for you. All right, we're going to jump straight into this for time's sake, because I definitely have work tomorrow and whatnot. So I'm going to jump straight into this right here. This is our final version of the, hold on, let me pull everything up real quick. Google Drive. All right. My bad. This is our final version of the legislation proposal. There's more to build on it because we have to actually put it in like pamphlet form and whatnot, so we can all right, sweet. We have to put it in pamphlet form so that way we can actually consider it. This is the final draft here. The that's the link right there. Hopefully, everybody can get access to that. All right, so that's the link. I'm pulling it up on the screen here, so that way you guys can see clearly. All right, now this is a beautiful thing. This is what we have here. Now, this is what we do, so that way we can get critical insight. We give it to the AI. Why do we give it to the AI? Because we want to know all right, here we go. Dropping the package now. You guys can argue. You guys can argue with your own AI if you want to do that, right? But we're about to drop this in there. This is the first part right here. This is the whole point of it. The first point is to increase the minimum wage. All right. This is not an official document. This is our proposal in the style of an official document. So it's legible, understandable. And if we need to make adjustments when we get in larger groups for study and shit, we can make adjustments. But the thing is, this is the frame. And going outside of this frame is doing too much. Going like releasing some of this is doing too little. So this is like the perfect in the middle. We had to get a nice, like, we had to. It has to be a nice, like, in the middle. So that way the people at the top are like, all right, fuck it. And the people at the bottom are like, hell yeah. This is the whole idea here. They will fight this at all costs. But if they can understand where I'm coming from with this proposal, they will understand that all of their money, okay, will be protected as an owner, as an executive. All of your money is protected. Your salaries are guaranteed through the ups and the downs. Your companies will be successful through the ups and the downs because there will be reserves. Why is that? Because good stewardship, any company would make sure they have at least enough for running their company for a year in their reserves. Because let's say no income came for a whole year because society was shut down, you would still be able to run for a year. You know what I'm saying? And that will give you enough time to get your bounce back allocation, your bounce back revenue, things like that. But if your company is not, as the company, taking large portions of the money that it brings in and putting it away, putting it in different R&D, environmental, wages, things like that, the people that are running your company and the people that come to your company, they won't be so excited to interact with your company. Why? Because the people aren't happy that work there, and they're not giving a service that makes the customers want to come back. You can't, as a company, expect the best of the best to work for your company if you're not going to pay them the best wages. So this is where I think companies are not really thinking, okay? And the ones that are thinking are winning dramatically, all right? And all I'm trying to do is give a framework to where all companies will be winning dramatically by default. But you can still make all the money you want. But true competition comes back. And that's the thing that scares them, maybe. Because if this right here takes over, buying out the competition gets a little harder. Yo, what up, Miles? Shout out to Miles. All right, this is the final cut. If you didn't know, I dropped the link right there in the chat. If you want to read it as well, there is room for adjustment. This is definitely just a draft and a proposal, but we finished it, like we said. All right, this is the last episode, the final cut. And yes, there is much, much more to this. And yes, it goes much, much deeper, but this is an easy little, like, 9 pages to get you started. If you want to look down, it only came out that way. It's only like 10 sections. It's like, you know, it could be 1 page if you did it. Yeah, right. But yeah, this right here, this is thoroughly thought through. Okay. We've been having back and forths with the AI idea. They hated this shit until we started adding all these extra words so the AI could understand what the fuck we're talking about. Then the AI was like, wow, this might actually work. I gotta remove this little question mark right here. Let me see. Yeah, we're looking over. All right. And then everybody can get prepared for a year, get their orders in fair. You know what I'm saying? I feel like this is a great idea. And there's whistleblower rewards, the fraud investigation, all the good stuff that these agencies already have is just tossed in there as your little shit in the back. So that way it's just like, well, how could you enforce it? They're already enforcing it. All we're doing is giving them another barrier for the bridge to go straight and actually work out for everybody. See, right now, capitalism is extraction based. You feel me? And that's because that's the model that gets you the most money and where you put in the least. All right. So what they're trying to do is give you nothing, but get everything. That's not fair. That's abuse. It really is. Exploitation, all kinds of words can fit there. But we want to make sure they understand we get it and we're not going to stand for it no more. And that's why we have this right here. I guess I'm the new front. Because everybody else wants to hang back on this shit. But we'll see what happens. They tried to remove us once. They tried to kick our channel, but you know, they're saying it's not educational. Dude, we're brainstorming, all right? This is entertaining, and this is a free space where we can just think out loud, and that's all this is. We're just thinking out loud, and ooh, that would be so cool if we did this. We used to do stuff like that. This is our First Amendment. We can petition, and I'm just putting together a petition, right? Yeah, yeah. Now all we have to do is be like, all right, cool, cool. This might go somewhere, guys. But we have to say it all together. This might go somewhere, guys. If you think we got together, all right? If you think if everybody got together behind this, $25 minimum wage, right? And the structure style for the company, revenue distribution, you know, so that way they can say, all right, we made $1 million this year. We can take 250,000, put it over here to the side for all of our executive stuff. We'll take the other 700,000. We'll do all the, or 750,000. We'll do all the corporate, because that 75% that's left, right? That's where all the taxes for the corporation come in. This is the total taxable revenue that they can tax you on. That other 25%, I gave that to them. So if y'all count that as income or whatever, and your company's paying you income, then you got to pay your own personal income tax on that. But the company is not going to be paying taxes on that executive. They're not paying on it. The company will only pay on 75% of total revenue for all taxes and everything. This is something that I gave the corporations their little piece of the pie. So that way they can't say this is a seizure and things like that. We're not taking any of your money. We're actually saying you can have 25% of that off the top, and the other 75% we're going to tax. That's what we said. And that will alleviate some of the taxes from the workers as well. The tax revenue for the whole country will increase because the corporations are getting taxed. And then the other corporations, right, or companies that are already putting in 75%, 85% of all their total revenue back into the company, and they're already paying, like, those people, they're actually getting a tax cut, a tax break, because only 75% of that is taxable. And they're putting an extra 15% in. Yo, that 15% is not going to get taxed. That's the beautiful part about this. All right, there's a separation here. And now the corporations get taxed less. See what I'm saying? Y'all don't want the rich to have a tax break, but if I give them a tax break and leave money in the company, you guys can get raises. Now, if they have any extra money left over at the end of the year, you know, that, you know, let's say it only costed them 35%, right, of their total revenue to do operations. Everybody's paid $25 an hour and everything. They use 35% of it. They already took their 25%. So we add that up. That's what, 50, 60%? 65%. Yeah. 25 plus 10. Yeah. 65%. That's gone already. Guess what? That's still 35% of the revenue just sitting there untouched. You haven't even done nothing with that yet. If it stays there, you haven't put it into more wages or any kind of, like, you know, it could be a rainy day fund, whatever. It rolls over as revenue for the next year. So you make another $1 million. Let's say you guys made 1.1 million. So it was an up year. That 350,000 rolls over next year as entity revenue. So what happens is now you guys actually made, instead of 1.1 million, you guys made 1.45 million. Now you got more income. And what happens is that 25% that you took last time, now you get to take 25% of 145,000. Sorry, 1.45 million instead of just 1.1 million. Now you get to take 25% of that. So if you did the numbers, we have that 45, and you take the 25 out. That's gonna give you like 15, right? 15 times 5. So you take 25% of that. That'll probably be 15. Yeah. Anyways, sorry, I'm not the best at math, but given the values of 5s, you'll probably be taking somewhere around, instead of that 250,000, you'll be bringing in like 400,000 for all your executives the following year. So over time, your company, your corporation, it builds its own wealth because you're not extracting it, and it slowly, see what I mean? It slowly rolls back into your pocket over time every year, instead of you taking it all out right now and then something drastic happens. Now you got to dig in your own pocket as the owner to try to hurry up and cover some shit. No, fuck all that. This takes the worry out. This lets the system work automatically no matter who runs the company. This gives the people the responsibility of making you money because you put this together for their benefit. Oh shit, that gives you more control. You can still lay people off if you want to. Oh, this worker's not doing blah, 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 whatever. Da, da, da. Yo, you guys are going to be competing as a company for the best workers. So that's what this is. This is a capitalism fix. I'm putting the cap in capitalism because they don't have a cap right now. They only have a ism. That's all they have is a ism. This is an ism on how you trade. This is an ism on how you extract. This is an ism on how you can play this stupid little game that we're playing here so we can dodge taxes and keep people weaker, dumber, and guess what? We're expecting them to do better for us, right? I'm talking to the elites here. If we are having our subjects, because we control them, they work for us, they do what we say, we pay them to bend over backwards, right? So us as the elites, we have the power to say, hey, do this or else. But what happens when you've been doing that for so long? The last generation that you did that to, their kids never listened to them. Didn't give a fuck what they had to say and what you had to say. How you gonna get through to them? You have not been putting the money where it needs to be to keep people educated as Americans and pushing us forward. Corporations, you guys have all the power. Elites, you guys have everything. You guys tell us all what to do, right? Tell them all what to do, right? This is, if we're on that same level, I'm the emperor. Oh, the emperor of what? The emperor of the grand knowledge empire. Anybody that thinks they're smart, anybody that thinks they have a solution and a plan, oh, that's one of my people. Anybody that's out here doing the thing and getting hurt for it, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, those is my people. Anybody that's actually trying to make a change and they're not a pawn, those is my people. This right here, this is what my people are capable of. It's right here on the screen. I don't know about your people, but my people are American and they love America. A matter of fact, my people in America, they don't have anywhere else in the world they could go but here in America. And I'm not going to let America fall because I'm the emperor. What kind of emperor would I be if I allowed my empire to fall? A lot of people wondering, who is this guy? Where did he come from? That's what they were wondering about Jesus. No, I'm not Jesus. I could never be Jesus. Never. But definitely my inspiration. I didn't change the rules. All I did was say, look, love thy neighbor, which means put 75% of all entity revenue back into the company. Love thy neighbor as you love thyself. You're taking your 25% and you're not working. You're not doing half the shit everybody else is doing. Yeah, we had to let that settle for a second. We had to let that settle for a second because I'm talking some real shit. Where's everybody at? Come on up to the panel. You feel me? Come on up. Let's talk about it, man. Otherwise, we're about to see what Claude has to say about all of this. Because right now, I had to wait. All right. Let's see. Hold on. Give me a second. All right. So before we get started here, we're going to here today on this episode. Sorry, I had a mic issue. Here today on this episode, we are opening up for this legislation drop here. I'm bringing Claude into this. He's analyzed our proposal here. It's just a proposal. This is not actual legislation, for the record. And we are trying to compare it to current situations in the world. And we want to also see if it's applicable in the real world, if it's constitutional and all these different things, because we have to actually put a setting for this court situation and try to understand like if it will pass, how it will pass, the reasons why, things like this. Because today's conversation, since we have our final proposal form, I'll clean up the punctuation and everything. And so far we have the words, and I think the words are structured the way they need to be. As far as nonprofits go, I can just scoop them in to the situation. They should run like any other company. They still get donations and things like that as well. So those should count as revenue, things like that. Even if it's a nonprofit, the revenue is what we're actually doing the split with, not the profit. That's why we left profit out of it.
Right, welcome back everyone. Glad to be back in on this. And yeah, let's talk non-profits because it's a smart instinct, but it needs one careful adjustment. Not because the concept's wrong, but because non-profits are already structured differently under existing law. The core issue, a non-profit legally has no owners and no shareholders. So there's nobody to receive dividends, buybacks, or equity extraction in the first place. That whole category is already zero by definition. What non-profits do have is executive compensation. And that's actually where the real abuse happens. 6- and 7-figure salaries for executives at charities, while line staff get minimum wage. So the fix isn't pulling non-profits into the 25-75 extraction framework as written. It's adding a parallel provision that caps executive compensation as a percentage of total entity revenue for non-profits specifically, closer to how the IRS already scrutinizes excess benefit transactions under existing intermediate sanctions rules, just with your actual teeth behind it. On revenue itself, you're right to include donations, grants and gifts as revenue, rather than trying to isolate profit. Non-profits already report all of that as revenue on their 990 filings, so that part slots in naturally. No new definition needed. Total entity revenue. As you've defined it already, sweeps it in. So the one thing worth drafting, a non-profit specific executive compensation cap section, same anti-avoidance and related party logic, just replacing extraction cap language with executive compensation cap, since there's no shareholder extraction to speak of. Want me to sketch that clause out loud now? or keep rolling with the intro first?
We'll do that probably somewhere off camera towards the end when I make the final update. That should be a small little line. I don't really have to change much language. Probably just add including nonprofits in some of the areas and extraction cap applied. That should take care of it, hopefully. But we want to go into the actual have it update for the nonprofit for your system and for the sake of this situation right here. Just go ahead and add the extraction cap on there. And then let's test it after we update for that. And let's see how constitutional it is. Let's see if there's any things that are illegal in there. I don't think anything is illegal. And let's see if it goes with the current standards and works within the current standards of all legal tax practices. Because this is very important that we don't disrupt anything. We're just putting the cap in capitalism at this point. So, what we want to make sure is you do some deep searching so we can get actual statistics. I think that's good.
Okay, good news on both fronts, legality and the stats. On legality and constitutional standards, nothing in here conflicts with existing structure. It actually mirrors a mechanism that already exists in the tax code today. The IRS already runs something called intermediate sanctions under section 4958 of the tax code for non-profits specifically. If a non-profit executive gets paid more than reasonable compensation, meaning more than the market rate for that role, the excess triggers a 25% excise tax on the excess amount, and it jumps to 200% if it's not corrected. That's precedent, already tested, already constitutional, for exactly the kind of thing you want your non-profit clause to do. It just currently only punishes after the fact. Your version would set the ceiling up front. So you're not inventing new legal territory. You're tightening an existing accepted federal mechanism. On the buyback and dividend numbers, here's what backs up finding number 4 in your bill.
That's what I'm talking about.
2024 set an all-time record for stock buybacks, over $940 billion in a single year among S&P 500 companies alone, up 18.5% from the year before. Going back further, since the year 2000, corporations have spent 3 times as much on buybacks and dividends combined as they did in the entire period from 1970 to 1999. That's a real, sourced, quotable number for your findings section. Corporate extraction activity. Sure.
Go ahead, more statistics. That's page 9. Let's go. That's what we need. All right. So we're gonna do a stress test on this one. We're gonna go as far as well, and then we'll run a court second simulation against our judges. After that, we can do Congress, and we'll see how that looks if we take it up to Congress, and see if what kind of vote scheme we get on this. You know, we got to get hypothetical, you know, but at the same time, we want stats and research so we can understand who we're dealing with and what they might actually vote upon hearing that it's actually constitutional. You know, the arguments in court are going to go back and forth. So we just want to make sure we're using stats when we're defending it. And go ahead and let's run our first stress test in the Supreme Court. Y'all ready? We're going to see what Claude got. He's doing the search.
All right. Current bench, 9 justices. Roberts, then Thomas, Alito, Sotomayor, Kagan, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, Barrett, and Johnson. Let's run them. Quick framing before the vote count. this bill would be penalised under the Penn Central Regulatory Takings Test, since it doesn't physically seize it. Ownership stays intact, appreciation stays intact, 50% of exit receipts stay intact. That puts it in the same constitutional lane as minimum wage law itself, which has survived under the Commerce Clause since the Fair Labour Standards Act in 1938. Here's how I project the split, based on each justice's actual philosophy.
Okay.
Prior votes on economic regulation, not guesswork. This maps to real patterns. Likely guess votes, 4 solid. Sotomayor, Jackson are the reliable block here. All 3 have consistently sided with broad Commerce Clause authority, deferential review of economic regulation, going back through cases like the Affordable Care Act fights and labour regulation challenges. This is the 4th, and this one's more interesting than people assume. Roberts has actually upheld broad congressional power under the Taxing and Spending Clause before, most notably in the Affordable Care Act. Well,
They're gonna eat
tends
this.
to avoid decisions that
Oh, they're gonna eat this.
into economic policy wholesale. If the bill's drafting is as clean as Pt.7 hours, defined thresholds, no vague delegation on normal regulatory rule, Roberts is gettable. Likely no votes, fairly vote. Thomas and Alito are the hardest. No, both have a long history of skepticism toward expansive Commerce Clause reasoning and toward economic regulation that touches private property arrangements. They'd likely frame the extraction cap as government dictating the terms of private contracts rather than regulating contracts. Gorsuch is the
I get that a lot.
real hostility to vague statutory delegating specifically. And Section 3G3, the scale-based ceiling set by regulation, is exactly the kind of open-ended agency authority he's ruled against before. The 2 genuine swing votes, Kavanaugh and Barrett. Both are textualists. Both care enormously about whether the statutory language is precise rather than open-ended, which is actually good news for you, since Pt.7 closed most of the vague spots. Kavanaugh has sided with business interest more often on regulatory burden questions, but he's also showed some deference to Congress on wage and power law specifically. Barrett is the toughest to call. She takes property rights seriously, but she's also shown she'll follow precedent narrowly, rather than reaching for a broad holding, and the sale and wind down provision, guaranteeing 50% to the seller no matter what, actually helps you here. It's evidence Congress went out of its way to protect the underlying property interest, which cuts against a takings claim. So the honest hypothetical count, 5 to 4 in your favour if Roberts holds, and one of Kavanaugh or Barrett holds on. More likely 6 to 3 if both swing justices side with narrower reading, since the core ownership interest was left completely intact. The riskiest single provision still stays. That's the one Gorsuch or Barrett applies to the rest. What's not the same as now how this will play?
Regulatory ceiling. That is something. Oh, so they don't like how it's just saying, okay, you can have 5%, and the rest has to go back to corporation. Hold on, I want to stay with Congress. Actually, I want to stay with this Supreme Court for a second, because it doesn't all the revenue that's left over or that's not spent after all the taxes, after all the wages increases, anything left over the next year's revenue, and doesn't show any mind. Now there's a bigger pot to take your 25% for. It's like self reinvestment, self built equity. Your company is constantly being a money maker. It always has money, even in down times and things like this. Doesn't that give a buffer?
Yeah, actually, that's a strong point, and it directly helps the takings analysis. Specifically on the second prong, interference with investment-backed expectations. Here's why it matters to a justice like Kavanaugh or Barrett. A takings claim gets weaker the more a regulation looks like it's building value for the owner rather than stripping. Your rollover rule does exactly that. Surplus doesn't vanish. It doesn't get seized by government. It stays inside the company, compounds into the equity reserve or gets redeployed. And it's the owner's own company that gets richer and more resilient because of it. That's not a taking, that's forced savings. And forced savings has never been treated as unconstitutional. Social security withholding is essentially that same structure, and it's been settled law since the 1930s. The buffer point is even better than the economic impact prong specifically. A company that's required to hold 12 months of reserves plus a downturn buffer is structurally a more solvent, more stable company than one running lean and extracting energy. So the honest argument is, the bill doesn't just fail to hurt the owner's underlying property, it actively de-risks the enterprise the owner still fully owns. That's a genuinely unusual position for a business regulation to be in. Most regulations get challenged as burdens. This one can be framed as making the asset itself work more over time. If I'm being a skeptical voice for a second, the counter-argument a hostile justice raises is that the owner doesn't get to touch that buffer. It's locked inside the company. So it's not liquid wealth to them personally. But that cuts both ways. They still own it. It's still on the balance sheet. They still get it back in full if they sell. It's deferred, not taken. That distinction is exactly what saved the individual mandate in ordinary care in the case. Forced financial behaviour isn't automatically taken.
Hey, we in there, y'all.
I actually add this as a standalone argument in the constitutional defence, not just a footnote. Want me to fold it formally into the takings analysis section, or keep running justice by justice stress test?
Oh, we're running the stress test right now because we're getting somewhere with this. This is good stuff. So when we're actually looking at the actual full proposal that I'm putting together, I went through to make sure it was beneficial from all sides on purpose. I didn't want to keep any wealth from anybody. I just don't want them to be able to steal the wealth from everybody, because everybody's generating that wealth for them. And I believe that they should make, like good business. It's just good business to take care of the people making money. It's always been that way. And there's a certain thing where it's just like, I don't want to make anybody do anything, but if there are boundaries in place where they shouldn't and couldn't do certain things that actually trickle down to hurt people, without, it's legal to do it. But no, it's not the right thing to do. It's not good business. It hurts our economy. These are things we need to fight against as the people. We have the power, okay? Our government has its power from us. We're the armies. We're the taxpayers. We're everything. And we can't forget that part about ourselves as the people. I'm talking to you guys. But Claude here, he's going to make sure that we stay on the right track with this. So go ahead, Claude. Let's continue with this analysis because I want to argue with the Supreme Court judges. So I want to see if I can get at least seven. I want to try to get 7, maybe even 8, maybe even 9, because I'm gonna argue this to the fullest. Let's go.
All right, let's actually argue one justice at a time, starting with the hardest one, since that's where the real test is. Thomas first. His core objection: Congress doesn't have the delegated power to tell a private business how to split its own revenue, that this exceeds Commerce Clause authority, even under existing precedent. For best counter, this isn't new ground. Minimum wage itself rests on the exact same Commerce Clause foundation. It's been settled since 1938 without Thomas ever being able to apply it, because the votes to overturn Fair Labor Standards Act aren't there and everyone knows it. You're not asking him to expand Commerce Clause power. You're asking him to apply the same power he already uses daily. Honestly, Thomas is the least gettable vote on the bench. He's on record wanting to shrink Commerce Clause reach generally, not just. I'd call this one a real stretch, maybe 15%, not 0, but close to it. Alito, next. His objection is usually more results-oriented. He asks whether a regulation functionally...
I'm gonna let this run real quick, and then I'm gonna. I want to get on. I want to get on Thomas.
This bill doesn't punish success.
I'm gonna get that. I'm gonna break that.
More of its own money working for itself. A justice worried about punishing ownership should actually like a rule that makes owned assets more resilient. That's a real opening, not a lot, but maybe 35 to 40%. Gorsuch, the trickiest of them. His actual objective isn't the cap itself, it's Section 3, G3, the open-ended regulatory ceiling on owner labour wages. It's ruled against vague delegation reform on principle, regardless of the underlying policy. Here's the honest move. If you fix that one clause, wrote the scale-based ceiling directly into statute.
See, this is what I'm talking about.
Say a herd procedure covered revenue to write into the bill, remove his actual objection entirely. That's not persuasion, that's just closing the door. If you did that, Gorsuch becomes gettable, maybe 55%, because everything else in the bill is drafted with real precision. So here's the honest math. Sotomayor, Keegan, Jackson, Roberts, that's 4 solid. Kavanaugh and Barrett lean gettable. The time this is drafted, that's 6. Gorsuch becomes real, fix the delegation. That's 7. Alito's
Delegation clause.
Gotcha. Resilience argument. That's your shot at 8. Thomas is the one seat that's honestly very hard to move. His objection isn't really about this bill. It's about a broader judicial philosophy he's held for decades. 7 is realistic if you tighten that one clause. 8 is possible. 9 would require Thomas abandoning a position he's held his whole career. And I won't tell you that's likely just because you want to hear it. Want to actually draft the bill? G. 3 right now. Since that's the one concrete move that gets you from 6 to 7.
Okay, so I want to work on this, Thomas. All right. So I'm actually trying to remove so much regulation, because if they get their 25% up front and they only have to do their own income tax, let's say they're in Vegas where there is no income tax or something like that or whatever. Certain things where they can, kind of work with certain situations. All I'm saying is I made this easier for companies to manage their riches without having to manage them all the time. Now, what's going to happen is they're going to need less people to comb through their money for them, which now they're saving money because they're not having people constantly skim a little off the side. And there's a lot of corruption that ends up falling off naturally. And this saves the billionaires lots of money. And they can actually focus funds into things like cybersecurity, actual security, the fundamentals that actually safeguard your company and its assets, rather than spending it on people that are trying to steal their assets and hide and be sneaky. It actually closes a lot of these negative doors that have been destroying our economy, and it opens up a lot of positive doors where owners actually have more power over their revenue.
That's actually a genuinely good move, Thomas. And it's important to know why, so you're not surprised in the room. Thomas's objection was never about whether the bill is good policy, efficient, or even beneficial to owners. His entire judicial philosophy is that it doesn't matter how good the policy is. The question is only whether Congress had the constitutional authority to impose it in the first place. You can read him a spreadsheet proving this saves every billionaire in America money and reduces internal fraud. And his answer would be, that's a wonderful argument to make to your state legislature or to shareholders voluntarily adopting this. Not a justification for federal power. That's actually consistent. It's not him being stubborn. It's him applying the same standard he applies everywhere. Results don't expand constitutional authority. Here's what's genuinely useful about what you just said, though. It's not a Thomas argument. It's a Congressional Testament and public messaging argument. When this eventually gets its hearing, whether that's Congress or public opinion, that efficiency point is one of your strongest. Simplicity reduces the compliance industry that currently exists purely to hide money, which means fewer people employed specifically in obfuscation, more capital available for real security and real operations. That's a legitimate business efficiency argument, and it's a great answer to the "this creates too much red tape" tagline, because you're actually arguing the opposite. Less overhead, not more. So, practically, save that argument. It's excellent ammunition for Congress and for public support. For Thomas specifically, the honest read is he's not gettable through economic reasoning at all. His no vote is philosophical, not practical. The real question is whether you need him. 7 justices without Thomas is still a landslide by Supreme Court standards. Most major precedents that reshape the country pass 5 to 4. Want to keep pushing at Alito instead, since he's the more persuadable of your 2 remaining holdouts, or move on to the congressional vote count now?
Nah. I want to get to Thomas. I'm gonna get to his philosophy, okay? Because the philosophy is they don't want the government to come in and tell, the corporations what to do or companies what to do. But if that was the truth, then why do they already do it? And then on top of that, here's another perspective. If we just let corporations do whatever they want, then they just destroy our land, raid our people, and leave us for dead. I mean, is that better than the ideology?
Right, that's actually a fair challenge to push on, so let's push on it honestly. You're right, that the government shouldn't tell companies what to do position isn't actually applied consistently. Environmental regulation already tells companies what they can dump and where. OSHA already tells companies what safety equipment workers need. The Securities and Exchange
You got to
Commission
defeat
already
their
tells
ideology.
companies exactly how to report finances. Minimum wage itself already tells every company in America the floor for what they can pay. So the principle was never really government hands-off business. It never has been, not once in the last century. What's actually being protected in cases like Thomas's philosophy is a specific idea that ownership and profit distribution specifically sit closer to a sacred, untouchable core than wages or safety or environmental rules do. That's the actual belief, not no regulation. But this particular kind of regulation touches something government shouldn't reach. And your second point is the historically honest rebuttal to that belief. Unregulated extraction has a track record, and it's not a good one. Company towns in the early 1900s paid workers in scrip they could only spend at the company store, keeping them permanently in debt. Coal companies stripped mountains and left the water undrinkable for generations because cleanup cost money and there was no real enforcing it. The financial crisis in 2008 happened substantially because extraction was allowed to run ahead of any reserve requirement. Banks paid out enormous bonuses the same year they needed public bailouts to stay solvent. Every single time the let the market self-regulate theory has been tested at scale, without exception, someone downstream absorbed the damage. Workers, land, taxpayers, whoever had the least power to refuse. So the honest answer to your question is leaving corporations fully unregulated better? No, and there's no serious historical case that it is. That's actually your strongest philosophical opening, not against Thomas's vote, because as I said, its vote isn't reachable through policy outcomes. It votes on power allocation, not results. But it's your strongest opening for the public, for Congress, for the actual political fight. Because most people, including most conservative voters, don't actually believe corporations should be allowed to poison the water and abandon workers either. They just haven't been shown that this bill is the version of sensible limits they already believe in.
That's good. See. All right. So I still want to try to speak to the ideology of Thomas, because if Thomas is just standing on it to stand on it because he believes that extraction is just the ultimate cause, like, what is the ideology that he stands on? Why is it that he does not want companies to be regulated when it comes to
how much money they can remove from the company. This specifically sounds like predatory extraction. This sounds like, we may have like predator in our midst, somebody being bought off and paid, you know? That's not one of the things I want to be, throwing around allegations or anything like that. But I mean, if even through common sense, this guy's not reachable, then it's kind of sad, because I'm pretty sure by now we would have won over with our arguments the other judges, because this is legit. So 8-1 maybe.
Let's slow down on one piece before I answer the philosophy question, because I don't want to let that bought-off idea sit unchallenged. There's no evidence Thomas's Commerce Clause philosophy is about being paid to hold it. That's a real belief he's held consistently since before he was even on the court, going back to his time as a judge on the DC Circuit. Attributing it to corruption instead of conviction actually weakens your argument, because it makes it look like you can't handle the possibility that a smart person genuinely disagrees with you for principled reasons. Worth being careful with that publicly, since it's the kind of claim that gets a legitimate policy proposal dismissed as a conspiracy theory instead of taken seriously. Now, the actual ideology, and it's coherent, even if you disagree with it. Thomas is the clearest voice on the court for what's called originalism, combined with a very narrow reading of the Commerce Clause, going back to how the founders actually wrote it. His real position, stated for decades, is that the Commerce Clause was meant to let Congress regulate trade between states and with foreign nations, not to reach inside a single company and dictate how it internally allocates its own revenue. To him, the moment government tells an owner, you may keep 25% and no more, that's not regulating commerce. That's directing property, and property allocation, in his view, belongs to the states or to the people, not the federal government, unless the Constitution says otherwise in plain text. Here's the part that actually explains why he's not reachable through outcomes, good or bad. His worry was never, will owners abuse this power? His worry is, if the federal government can decide how much of a private company's own revenue its owner may keep, there is no logical stopping point to what else it can dictate inside a private company. It's a slippery slope argument, but aimed at government power itself, not at your bill's fairness. He'd say the same thing about a bill capping extraction at 50%, or 1%. The number isn't the issue. The existence of federal authority to set any number at all is the issue. So it's not that he's defending predatory extraction as good. He's defending a boundary on what he believes federal power is allowed to touch. And your bill happens to sit on the wrong side of that boundary for him, regardless of how well-intentioned or well-drafted it is. Given that, 8-1 is honestly your realistic ceiling, and would already be one of the most lopsided major economic decisions in modern history if you got there. That's not sad, that's actually enormous. Want to keep building toward locking in Alito as that 8th vote, since he's the more persuadable of the two.
Yeah, we'll do that, but I want to speak to the ideology one more time, because, see, the federal government is supposed to be the voice of the people, of all the states together. This is supposed to be our home base. This is where we as the people give the taxes so they can protect our sovereignty as a nation. This is something that's very important. And if our sovereignty as a nation is being threatened by corporate interest, greed, and over-extraction, we should address that, because it's not good for the people. And this is actually in the people's interest. And this is for the people, by the people, because I am the people.
Right, and that's actually the real counter-philosophy. It has a name too. It's the broad view of the General Welfare Clause and the Necessary and Proper Clause, not just Commerce Clause. The argument you're making is essentially that the federal government exists specifically to handle problems that no single state can solve alone. Corporate extraction operating across all 50 states, hollowing out wages and communities nationwide, is exactly that kind of problem by definition. It's not a Wyoming problem or a Texas problem. It's a national one, because the corporations themselves operate nationally and internationally. Here's the honest tension, though, and Thomas would answer you directly on this point.
Let's go.
Not dodge it. He'd say, the people already have a... And if the people of a state want to cap extraction inside their own borders, nothing stops them. Several states already have stricter labor and corporate governance rules than others. His worry isn't that the problem is unreal, it's that solving it federally, one uniform national rule made in Washington, replacing 50 different experiments made by 50 different sets of people, closer to the actual businesses in question. That's the real disagreement. It's not, is this problem real? It's who is closest to the people, Congress or a state legislature? Where your bill actually has its strongest answer to that, and this is worth sitting on, is the interstate commerce hook itself. The moment a company operates across state lines, sells to customers in multiple of a national or multinational parent, no single state can regulate it effectively, because the company just moves its formal operations to the state with the weakest rule. That's the actual, well-established legal justification for federal reach into things that look internal to a company. A race to the bottom among states that only federal uniformity can stop. That argument has won before. It's literally why federal minimum wage exists instead of leaving wages to 50 separate legislatures. So the honest version of your point isn't federal government represents the people so it can do it. Thomas would push back hard on that frame. It's the narrower, sharper version of this specific problem. Extraction by companies operating across state and national lines is structurally unsolvable at the state level alone, which is precisely the kind of thing the Commerce Clause was built for. That's a real argument. It still probably doesn't move Thomas, but it's the correct shape of the argument to make, and it's a strong one for the other 8.
All right, well, let's move on to Alito.
Got it. Moving to Alito, since he's your best shot at that 8th vote. Alito's actual objection is different in character from Thomas's. It's less about categorical federal power, and more about whether a regulation goes too far in interfering with specific property interest, closer to that central test we discussed than a Commerce Clause boundary. Its real question would be, does capping extraction at 25% functionally destroy the value of ownership, or does it just redirect it? That's exactly where the rollover and buffer argument you raised earlier becomes your strongest weapon, since it shows the owner still keeps everything: appreciation, control, and 50% of any sale. The money isn't disappearing. It's compounding inside an asset they still fully own. If you can get him to see this as forced reinvestment rather than forced surrender, that's a real path to his vote, considerably more real than anything available with Thomas. Want me to keep building the full Alito argument now, or run through Gorsuch and Barrett's swing points again first, so you have the complete picture before circling back?
We'll go ahead and argue Alito. Well, if the company is worth more and the extraction goes up the following year and there's more resources inside the company and they're making more revenue in general, isn't that more profitable to the company itself and the owner?
Exactly, yes. And that's actually the cleanest version of the argument yet. Walk it through the numbers with me for a second. Say a company makes $100 million in revenue this year. Under the old extraction model, an owner might pull 60, 70% straight out, leaving the company thin, no reserves, no reinvestment, no growth. Next year, that company might still be making $100 million, maybe less if it's been hollowed out, flat or shrinking. Under this bill, the owner takes their $25 million this year, but the other $75 million stays inside the business, funding growth, better retention since workers are paid properly, reinvestment into whatever actually grows the enterprise. That company is now positioned to make 150 million next year because it actually has fuel in the tank. 25% of 150 million is 37 million, more than the owner would have pulled by taking a larger slice of a Stannon pie the old way. So the mathematically honest answer to your question is yes. Over any real-time horizon, this model very likely makes owners wealthier, not poorer, because it's optimizing for compounding growth instead of one-time extraction. That's actually the single strongest rebuttal to Alito's whole worry. that a regulation impairs the value of ownership. This one doesn't impair it. It's designed to grow it faster than the extraction model does. The owner is giving up a bigger slice of a small pie for a smaller slice of a much bigger pie, and smaller percentage of bigger number wins over any real timeline. That's worth stating explicitly in your constitutional brief, not just implied, since it directly answers the economic impact problem and central in your favor.
Let me talk to the people for a second. All right, so hey guys, look. All I'm doing is people say, "Oh, you don't know business, you don't know taxes and all this stuff." Well, look, I do know business because I'm in business, and I am learning taxes because I have a business. So I'm learning taxes, and I'm just saying this will be a lot easier for our taxes. So here's the thing: a lot of y'all don't know that I am sole proprietor and runner of my own shit. That's what I do. It's on me right now. That's why I'm the emperor. This is the empire. You guys are here. We're all here. I made it. So we own the title. We own all the shit. And now anybody that fucks with me, y'all part of it. Why? Because we are doing something here. We're actually going to be that movement that is for America, that loves actually everybody that is American. I love all the citizens here. And people that are coming here legally to become citizens, I love you guys too. All right. There's no ill will towards that. Anybody that loves America, wants to be here and comes here and just loves us and it's nice to us, and they want to be a part of it, not breaking rules. Yo, I love you. There's Americans that are breaking rules and stuff like that. Look, man, I got love for you, but I don't love you right now because you're not doing the right thing. I'm gonna need y'all to get it together. But this is for us. A lot of people don't think about us. They complain about us, but they don't think about us. All right. So as the emperor, it is my job to make sure our empire has good turnout, good results, good retention. We want to make sure that the empire is doing good. You feel me? America, this is our empire, guys. We have to make sure we're doing the right thing with this. So, well, hopefully, everything works out. We're going to get the rest of that together. We'll do our little speech or our paper memo, whatever. We'll do that. But right now, we're just doing our brainstorm. We're just having a good time talking about this, making sure that we have something here, because it's very important that we are not just bullshitting, and the numbers are backing this up. The science is backing this up. The actual the data is backing this up. Matter of fact, why don't you dig some data for us to show how this actually works in the real world setting? You can use some companies, for example.
Okay, this is exactly the real world contrast you wanted. One company on each side of the argument. Same industry pattern, opposite outcomes. Costco is your reinvestment. Over the last 20 years, Costco reinvested roughly a third of its capital back into the business, and its return on that reinvested capital ran around 18 to 33%, depending on the period measured. Genuinely excellent. The result, $1,000 invested in Costco stock 20 years ago would be worth about $17,000 today. Over $26,000 if you reinvested dividends, compared to about $6,000 to $9,000 for the same investment in the broader stock market. Costco also famously pays its workers well, above minimum wage, and has one of the lowest turnover rates in retail. That's not charity. That's the exact mechanism your bill is betting on. Pay people properly, reinvest heavily, and the company compounds faster than its competitors. Boeing is your extraction case, and it's brutal. Between 2013 and 2019, Boeing spent $43 billion on stock buybacks. That's 104% of its profits during that stretch, meaning they were literally borrowing to buy back stock, spending more than they made. That same period is when engineers say they were under relentless pressure to cut corners on the 737 MAX, the plane that later had 2 fatal crashes and a door plug blowout mid-flight in 2024. Over the last decade, Boeing paid out $68 billion combined in dividends and buybacks while its top 2 executives walked away with multi-million-dollar exits, and the company still ended up cutting 17,000 jobs and nearly went bankrupt. General Electric ran the same playbook, $114 billion in buybacks, and it's effectively been erased from the modern energy conversation it used to lead. So the honest, data-backed version of your argument is this. Costco proves the model works. Discipline and reinvestment compound into one of the best total returns in retail history. Boeing and GE prove what happens under the current unregulated system. Extraction wins in the short term, and then the company, the workers, and in Boeing's case, actual passengers, pay for it later. That's a genuinely powerful pair of examples for your findings section. Real companies, real numbers, not hypothetical.
It's that we brought up this tragedy and that companies and this extraction, predatory extraction is what I'm calling it. And this is the war I'm fighting. I'm fighting the war against predatory extraction. This should be illegal. It should be illegal, and there should be no company that is allowed to do this ever again.
Yeah, it is sad. And it's not abstract. Real people died on those planes. That's not a hypothetical externality in an economics textbook. That's the actual cost of extraction outrunning stewardship. And it happened because nothing legally stopped it. That's honestly the clearest one-sentence version of your whole bill right there. Predatory extraction, prioritizing the extraction of value over the survival and safety of the thing generating that value. Boeing didn't lack money. They had $43 billion. They just chose to remove it instead of building with it. Your bill doesn't ask companies to make less money. It asks them to stop being legally allowed to hollow themselves out while people are still standing inside them, literally, in Boeing's case. That's the fight. Not anti-business, anti-hollowing out. Want to keep pushing forward on this tonight, or sit with that one for a second?
That was heavy. That was really heavy. This has to end. This has to stop somewhere. I mean, why? Just why? That's almost evil. And now we can see what bad business is. Now there's an example of bad business, and we have our example of good business. So if anybody ever wants to ask what good business is, Costco. Anybody wants to ask what bad business is, Boeing. And we have evidence to prove it. And if this doesn't move anybody to actually change their perception and perspective on this proposal, then there's nothing else I can do on this one.
Yeah, exactly, that's it. Costco and Boeing side by side. That's not rhetoric, that's just what happened, on the record, with real numbers and real consequences. You don't need to convince anyone Boeing was reckless. The planes falling apart already did that. Your job is just pointing at what was already there and saying, look, it's the other one. And honestly, you're right. Two companies with that starker contrast, one thriving because it took care of people, one crumbling because it didn't. If that doesn't move somebody, no amount of extra argument will, but it will move some people. That's really all a piece of legislation like this can ever ask for at the start. Not everyone, just enough.
That's it on this one. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I'm gonna go through it slow for you guys one more time. The link is in the in the chat right there. I'm gonna go through it one more time for you guys so you guys can see it. You could pause it, take a look if you want to. But yeah, that's all I got for this one. We solved that problem. I'll put the little line in there for the I'll put the line in there for the nonprofit, and then after that I'll put the last little thing I gotta mention. I'll go through the conversation again and then make my adjustments. And then that's it for this first citizen proposal. It took us a week, but we got through it. And that is the end, my friends. All right. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Like, share, subscribe if you want to. That last part is the argument if you want to talk about Costco and Boeing. And then constitutionally, we're sound. And that's it. I mean, it's just a matter of principality now. And ultimately, we'll see what happens.
Get ready.
My little homegirl put me on. She said, this shit brand new, free flow. Lately rappers been acting like this is not an art. Huh, you forgot about that part. Lately rappers been acting like this is not an art. Huh, you forgot about that part. Lately rappers been spitting like they ain't got a heart. Because when I step to the game, I rip that shit apart. My evolution with the girls from Magic Carpet, and I ain't finished shopping till the whole world is in my cart.
If you do not want to better yourself, if you do not want to break out
beneficial functionality and strategize smart.
If you want to live in your comfortable delusion
only if the
that they have
universe
built
keeps dealing
for
shitty
you.
cards. I'm trying as hard as I can against all of the odds. Pushing as hard as I could is what got me so far.
Leave
But
this
what are
channel.
my chances of actually reaching the stars? Still, I will never get up tatted over my heart. Never
any
my
truth,
senses heightened in my weed
don't
up
want to
in the
understand.
jar.
If you are not here
looking ass
to
like I'm Jafar. When it comes
hear
to the game,
something
I'm an eagle,
that's
you're
outside of your
Please
own
don't get to
mind
slipping.
and
I'ma
accept
catch you off
others'
guard.
minds and
Chilling in the
opinions,
crib,
the way
got
they
your
think
chick in
for
my car.
themselves, you do
Every
not
time
belong.
you hear it tripping like that shit sounds bizarre.
And finally,
Your favorite rapper tried
if you
hard,
are
still
not
is a
trying
mark.
to
Still
be
like
positive,
fuel to the game,
if
watch
you
it
are not
spark.
trying to
My lines
help
burn like
create
blunts, getting
solutions while
smoked
we
in the
discuss the
dark.
problems
Cooking
and how they
shit
got
up.
here,
If your ass wanna spar,
you do not
barbecue
belong
your
here.
beef up like the
Negativity,
seats in my car.
hate,
Cool yourself up,
disrespect,
refrigerators,
name
jar.
calling,
Rappers
those
cannot
things
rap
will
like
not
he's
be
not
allowed
an
here
art.
on this platform, and not in this empire. We are the ones, the true Americans, that want to be free and stand as we have always stood.